desk the other day, looking at all the work I had left to do. The deadline slowly closing in, and my mind fully aware of the consequences of not finishing the work. And still, I said to myself, nah, I'll do it later. Well, that later never came. I picked up my phone and said, you know what? I'll just watch one video. That one turned into 10, and slowly that turned into more than an hour of scrolling. I missed the deadline. What followed it, though, was stress, guilt, and that one voice in your head that says, dang, you messed up again. See, as long as I can remember, I've given this behavior one simple label: lazy, unfocused, and undisciplined. But here's what bothered me. I wanted to do well, and I understood the consequences of not doing the work. So nothing about that moment really made sense. So I started asking a different question. Not what's wrong with me, but rather, what am I responding to? See, this question really changed everything. What if I wasn't just being lazy? What if I was making a trade of some sort? See, whether we realize it or not, most moments in our life kind of work like a transaction. Not with money most of the time, but things like time, attention, comfort, and risk. When I was choosing to scroll over doing my work, for example, I wasn't just being lazy. I was trading short-term comfort for long-term stress, relief now for pain later. And once you see that, you start to notice something a little uncomfortable, that this isn't just about self-control. It's about this thing called incentives. See, incentives are basically this thing from economics, which mean a reward, a benefit you gain from doing something. And they're present in almost every single action we do. Take friendships, for example. It's one of the last things that comes to our mind when we think of the word economics, right? It's also a trade. You're trading time, you're trading loyalty, you're trading risk, everything for the incentive of companionship. So we can essentially think of life as a marketplace where the incentives are the currency. So we like to think our thoughts are personal. We like to think they're moral, or maybe they're just random. But again and again, it keeps pointing to the same thing. What am I getting out of this? Now, here's a really good example of how powerful incentives are. So a few decades ago, there was a scientist called B.F. Skinner. And he conducted this really interesting experiment. It was called the Skinner's box. And it's pretty simple, actually. So he had a box, actually a cage, with a rat inside of it, along with a lever. Each time the rat pressed the lever, it got a reward of some sort, like food. But what he did next is what's really interesting. So he changed it so that the rat didn't always get food when he pressed the lever. He changed the frequency of the rat getting the rewards. And it's actually kept the rat hooked on way more than it was before. It made the rat way more happy to get the exact same reward that it was getting before. See, the same incentive in both cases, but just a different way of obtaining it. Now hold on a second. When you think about it, a lot of us here do have a miniature version of the Skinner's box here with us, right in our pockets actually, our mobile phones. Specifically, social media. See, the thing about social media is you can't really predict what's about to happen next. Some videos might be really good, while others might be dull. Some notifications, they can instantly lift your mood, while some are useless. Just like the rat, it's this unpredictability which keeps us hooked on in a way consistency never could. And this isn't by any means by accident. The system is perfectly incentives engineered. So now, once you start to see incentives, the next thing you start to notice is cost. That every single decision we make has a cost behind it. Every incentive has a trade-off behind it. Say skipping work, for example. The cost isn't zero. It's tomorrow's stress. Going to university, the cost isn't just the tuition fees. It's the years of wages you didn't earn. And most of the time, we don't ignore these costs because we're stupid. We ignore them because they're hidden. Now, here's where things get a little more interesting. So a few years ago, again, there were researchers, they were researching daycares in the Middle East. See, these daycare centers, they had a small problem. Parents kept picking up their children late. So obviously, they introduced a small $3 fine, which the parents had to pay every time they picked up their children late, obviously hoping for the number of latecomers to decrease. What happened, though, was that it didn't. And what's even more interesting is that even after the fine was removed, the number of latecomers were even worse than it originally was. So now comes the question, why? See, before the fine, being late only had a social cost, the guilt and the sense of responsibility to come pick up your children early. But what the fine did is, it priced being late. It made it just another transaction. Even though the cost was clear in this case, it did not make things any better. And that's the thing we often forget. That people, mostly, don't care about cost or intentions. We care about incentives. So the question isn't, why am I like this? But rather, it's what am I responding to? What's rewarding me to keep doing this action again and again? And the system's everywhere. In workplaces, for example, where the amount of work you do is valued more than the impact you make. In social media apps, for example, where your attention is valued more than your mental well-being. So, if you don't design your own incentives, something else will. An app or a list or a system you never really agreed to. And this is what I want to leave you with today. Not advice, not a checklist or anything, but a new way of thinking of things. So next time you catch yourself blaming yourself for something you don't like, for doing something you don't like, ask yourself, what's rewarding me? What keeps me doing the same action over and over again? What's the incentive in this case? Because once you probably see the incentive, you gain something really powerful, choice. And that, guys, is the business of everything. No money, no markets, but the quiet transactions we make in every single moment in our life, often without really realizing we're making them.